Welcome. Thank you for joining us for First Person Conversations with Holocaust Survivors. I'm Bill Benson, and I have hosted First Person for 25 years. Each month, we bring you firsthand accounts of survival during the Holocaust. Each of our First Person guests serves as a volunteer at the museum. We are honored to have Holocaust survivor Ruth Cohen share her firsthand account of survival with us. Ruth, thank you for joining us and for agreeing to be our first person.
Of course. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, Ruth. There's so much for you to share. We'll just get started right away. Ruth, before we turn to World War II and the Holocaust, please tell us about your parents, Herman and Bertha. What were their lives like in Mukachevo, Czechoslovakia, which is present-day Ukraine, before you were born?
My parents were quite wonderful. My dad was a businessman and a wonderful father, and I am sure a wonderful husband. My mother was a wonderful mother, sort of a housewife, and a constant volunteer in Zionist organizations.
And here we see a photograph of your parents.
Yes.
Yeah. Ruth, tell us a little bit more about your mother. I remember I was struck by something you said, that while she was not formally educated, she was really a self-educated woman.
Yes, she was completely.
Mm-hmm.
A complete intellectual, a complete, she was completely in everything, really.
Everything, yeah.
She read every book there was. As a matter of fact, we children could not read any book until she read it and gave us permission to read it.
Mm.
I can imagine what the reason was, but that's how it was. She was quite a woman.
And a little bit more about your father then, and tell us about his business.
My father was a businessman with his dad and his brother. They manufactured wine, liquor, and beer. Actually, they bottled beer and sold everything wholesale.
And I think you shared with me that the public could come in one day a week, I think, to purchase it directly.
Right.
Yeah.
On Friday afternoons for the Shabbat service at home, Shabbat dinner at home.
Mm-hmm.
We, the children, were supposed to be filling the bottles in my grandfather's basement for people who brought in an empty bottle. We refilled it, but I have no idea about payments. We have nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
That was our job.
And Ruth, your father had been previously married and had a daughter, Teresa. Tell us about your sister.
My sister was 7 years older than I. She was, after my father divorced, or however it went, I don't know. My sister stayed with my grandparents until my dad got remarried.
Mm-hmm.
Then she lived between our house and my grandfather's house, grandparents' house, which sort of created problems.
Mm-hmm.
Understandably so.
Yeah. And Ruth, were your parents religious?
Quite.
Quite.
The household was an ultra-Orthodox household. With everything that Orthodoxy requires.
Yeah.
And so were we. We were raised that way, and it was demanded at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We lived by it.
Ruth, you were born April 26, 1930, and your little brother Ari was born a year and a half later. What do you remember about your early years in Mukachevo?
Pretty wonderful things. This picture is of a very early picture. I might have been just maybe 3, maybe a little more than 3. My brother was about a year and a half younger than I. My family from America sent us pictures, sent us packages rather frequently. And each time there was a package, there was something in it for us, the children. As soon as the package arrived, my mom dressed us, didn't dress herself, but she dressed us and brought us out to take a picture of the presents we got. So there I am with a football, and my brother, I really think it's a giraffe, but I'm not positive. It looks like it.
And that's, of course, that seems kind of striking, the fact that your gift from America is a U.S. football sent to you as a little girl. Yeah.
Right. Well, they knew that I was going to be a soccer player, which is football.
Yeah. Well, yes. Tell us
Didn't know it.
Tell us a little about your brother, Ari.
Aside from being sweet and quite handsome, he was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
In every area of the world, he was sweet. He was kind. He was an excellent student. He was very loving and very lovable. Good Torah learner, good student. The rule in our house was that my dad would come home Friday afternoon early, so he could listen to my brother's Torah learning for the week. They would debate it, and then they would go to services at night, and he would be debating the Torah portion with all the men sitting in our row.
Your little brother, Ari, would do that. Yeah.
Yes, and he was maybe 10, 9.
Yeah.
But until Holocaust started in our house.
Tell us what you, if anything, you can tell us about this particular photo of the two of you.
Okay, I also want to say that he was excellent in math.
Okay.
He was excellent in everything. My mother used to tease him that just put your book under your pillow and you will remember it by the morning. And he always did. I don't know how, must have gotten up and read it or whatever, but he always did. It was great. The outfits we're wearing are Tiroli outfits, which was probably Tiroli all week in Switzerland. My mother made my skirt and my blouse. I don't think that she made my brother's outfit. I used to think so, but I can't imagine how she did it. So that's the story of that picture.
It's a great photograph of the two of you. Tell us some about your extended family. You had a large extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my mother's family, they each had 7 siblings. My mother's family was 2 of them were in the United States, and the rest of them were scattered in Czechoslovakia mostly. They visited us all the time. Sometimes every 3 weeks we had guests, 2 weeks, a month. There was somebody there all the time. It was always wonderful. It was always a wonderful holiday to have them there. My father's family lived also just one hand was in the United States. The others were in Mukachevo or in neighboring cities. Mm-hmm. And they too came to visit all the time. They didn't visit us. They visited my grandmother and grandfather all the time.
But it sounds like you had lots of time interactions with your cousins and other family members.
We also did some summer vacations with one of my aunts, my father's sister, mm-hmm. who had a child our age.
Ruth, can you tell us a little about the Jewish community in your hometown and your family's relationship with your non-Jewish neighbors?
Well, most of our neighbors were not Jewish.
Okay.
We lived on a street that had 6 houses, 5 or 6 houses on one side and 2 across the street. People across the street were Jewish. Everyone else outside of ourselves on the other side were non-Jews. I never really went into any one of the houses. We said hello and said goodbye and said have a nice day. That was it. But they were pleasant. There were never any issues, none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the end of the street, there was a Pravoslav home, a park that housed the Pravoslav priests, which officiated at the church a few blocks away from us. Somehow, I never did, but my mother seemed to have been have some kind of relationship with some of the priests.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they were not priests; they were maybe yes. Anyway, when Hitler moved into Mukachevo, to Hungary, actually, either they offered us or my mother asked them for papers, and they were very willing to do it, but it never materialized because the time was so short. We only had 3 weeks.
And we'll come to that in just a short while. Before we go on, Ruth, I'd like to let you know that we have people watching and listening to you today from all over the place. We have from here in the United States, we have people watching you in Virginia, Florida, Massachusetts. We also have international viewers today watching from Denmark, Czechia, Italy, the Netherlands, Finland, and Hungary. And I want to share with you a comment from an audience member named Sid. Sid writes, "Hi, Ruth. I spoke with you with all of my friends when we visited the Holocaust Museum in March. We loved talking to you."
Probably same here.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. Ruth, from 1938 to 1939, Nazi Germany dismantled Czechoslovakia. In 1938, Mukachevo and other nearby communities became part of Hungary. You were just 8 years old at the time. What happened to your family now that your hometown was part of Hungary?
Well, things changed instantly. The very next day, my dad's business was taken away from them. My school changed from being a co-ed school to classes could not be kept with girls and boys. The curriculum was the same, but not the attendance. We had a nanny from Germany who received a letter almost immediately saying that she must come home. She cannot work for Jews. And that was a very sad day in our house.
Mm-hmm. So almost with no notice, she had to leave.
Right.
Yeah. Ruth, moving forward several years, in 1942, your mother learned some of her family members in Slovakia had been deported to the Majdanek concentration camp in German-occupied Poland. Please tell us what your mother learned about that and what its impact was on your family.
Somehow we found out that this happened. My mother's brother, his wife, and 3 children, as well as my mother's sister from another town, were taken and murdered right away. We went into complete deep mourning. We didn't listen to music after that. didn't go to the movies, didn't go to the theater or concerts or anything. We commemorated the happening at home all the time.
So that period of deep mourning lasted for quite a while, didn't it?
About 2 years.
2 years, yeah. Ruth, two young cousins of yours, Leo and Esti Haber from Slovakia, came to live with you. Please tell us about that. And I think we've got a picture of them here.
Of the pictures of Leo and Esti, their nanny and the nanny's boyfriend in Nitra, which was Slovakia at the time. I don't know how, but my parents and their parents decided that they will give us their 2 children, but they kept one because they just had to keep one. They couldn't part with all of them. Hoping that we will save these children. So we adopted them. They lived with us. And unfortunately, they came to camp with us. And my cousin's first child didn't go to Auschwitz until November.
Tell when your cousins came to you, when Leo and Esti came to you, do you remember that when that happened?
You mean the actual happening?
Yeah, coming to live with you. What was that like for you?
I just remember them living with us.
Yeah.
And I remember that they were going to come, but no, I don't remember the actual moment.
Yeah. Tell us about Leo and Esti's parents, Hedvig and Ferry Haber, and the actions that they took to save other Jews.
They, with the permission of somebody in the government and having to pay for each person they were hiding, hid, I don't know how many Jews, but they did many until around November of 44, they were ratted out and taken to Auschwitz.
Mm. And so I think something very similar happened to some other family members of yours. They also had been hiding Jews and doing all they could to save them. What do you know about your maternal uncle Moritz Schwartz and his wife Hannah?
My uncle was a rabbi, first of all. Second of all, he was a teacher of Zionism. So he had most all boys from all over Europe, sort of, teaching them trades. He had a thing set up with trades that they were going to use in Israel when they finally managed to get there. Most of them did. I don't know when, I don't know much about it, but most of them did. However, my aunt and uncle did the same thing that Hedvig did. They saved, that I know of, 125 Jews, somehow in their attic. It couldn't be their attic, it had to be the synagogue and somewhere else. But they too had the permission of somebody in the government of their city, Hlovets. And at one point, pretty much at the same time, in November, they were ratted out and taken to Auschwitz, where they ended up going on one of the death marches, where my uncle died and my aunt survived.
So these relatives of yours that had done such a heroic thing in saving a large number of Jews, they all got ratted out, as you put it, denounced in some way, and ended up being sent to Auschwitz, all of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Ruth, in March 1944, Nazi Germany invaded and occupied Hungary. So as bad as things had been for your family and other Jews in Hungary to that point, it immediately became far worse. What do you recall about the Germans coming into Mukachevo?
Well, either the middle of the night or very early in the morning, we heard tanks come in, roaring through the city. It continued until the morning, pretty much the same morning, or maybe a day later. We got notices, I don't know how, but the city got notices that the Jews had to leave their homes and go to one of the ghettos. Our ghetto was, the ghetto that we had to go to, was very close by. I don't remember what happened or how it happened, but after we gathered the stuff, which was some food, some dishes, some clothing, we walked over 3 or 4 blocks from our house to this compound that belonged to my uncle's wife's family. We stayed there for 3 weeks.
Ruth, before you go on, if I could ask you a question, were you forced to wear the yellow Star of David?
By then, yes.
Yes, you were. Okay.
The minute they came into Mukachevo with the tanks, the edict went out that we had to put on.
So right away.
Yes.
Okay. In April, as you were telling us, you had, you went to the other place where you were forced to go. You and your family were then forced to move into a ghetto, as you said, but by May, everyone in the ghetto was marched to the railroad tracks. Please tell us what you recall about arriving at the railroad tracks.
We all went there, all walked there, and I think it was around 2 miles. When we got there, what we saw, which was really terrible, is that my very favorite chemistry teacher was a really remarkably wonderful person. Refused to put her foot on the steps to go up on the train. So they shot her. And that was one of the most terrible experiences I had.
Ruth, I'm going to ask you to say a little bit more about that, but could you just speak up just a little bit louder? So I want to make sure that everybody around the world is able to hear you very clearly, because what you're telling us is so important. So this teacher, this was somebody who was very special to you. You saw her murdered right in front of your eyes.
Yes. She was very special to me, and I assume to the whole class or everybody else. She was just a very, very special person. She was an excellent teacher, an excellent person, caring, loving, doing. She was always there when you needed her.
So you and all your neighbors and other Jews from the area were now forced onto the freight cars on this train.
Yes.
What do you recall of that transport that you were on, and did you have any idea where it was taking you?
No, we had no idea. At one point, we asked the Germans to tell us, I don't know who the we was, but we asked the Germans to tell us where we're heading to, and we were told that we are going to work in some fields up north, and that's all they would say. We had absolutely no idea what was going on. We asked for water. We were not given any water either. So no answers and no water.
Ruth, who from your family was with you in that train car?
Well, probably all the families that lived, most of the family that lived in Mukachevo. Not some of my cousins, but most of the rest of the family. My mother, of course, my father, my sister, my little siblings, and the rest of the family. And the train, the car held 100 people.
I think you shared with me that your grandmother, who was in a wheelchair, she was actually put into a different freight car than yours.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably with some other people in either wheelchairs or other issues. And I'm sure that they were first to be gassed.
Yeah. And during that trip, which took almost 4 days, as you just said, you had no water. I assume very, very little. If you had any food, it was probably if you had brought any along with you by any chance. So the conditions must have just been horrific.
They were.
Yeah.
I also don't remember having a potty. I
Mhm.
know that there was one, but I don't remember it.
Mhm. And after 4 days traveling in those conditions, crammed into the freight car, you arrived at the Auschwitz-Birkenau killing center in Nazi-occupied Poland. Ruth, tell us what happened to you and your family once the train pulled into Auschwitz.
Tell you what I remember. That's immediately we heard raus, raus, raus. The Nazis were standing there with dogs and sticks and screaming, get out, get out, get out. And also there were some men in striped uniforms who were walking all over. And from what I heard later is they were telling mothers with children who were older than the ones who they had to hold on their hands or hold their hands, to tell them to go away, or if they are asked how old they are, tell them that they are older, like 15, 16. That's what I remember about that. And then I remember my mother going to the left with my brother and two siblings to adopt the children, and my dad going sort of straight ahead, and my sister and I to the right, which we were told later that that's where we were going. That's where we were sent to work.
So your mother with your brother Ari, Leo, and Esty, they all were sent off to the left side.
Right.
Yeah. So you and your sister were separated together, and you went off in another direction to the right, as you said. What happened next for you and Teresa?
Well, this is something that I don't remember. I have absolutely no memory of. But what I understand is that this took about 4 hours. We walked to a barrack someplace where we were. I don't think it was here. It was, I don't know where. We were shaven, had to get undressed, had to shower. They were delousing us, shaved. Oh, they shaved our heads. They shaved our pubic hair, underarm, whatever. And I don't remember this, but I was told that they let us parade around the room for some people's pleasure. And supposedly some of the women, many of the women, were terrified about that and embarrassed and so on. I was too young for those feelings.
And the place that you were taken to was you went to barrack number 30 in what was called the Sea Lager, which I believe is what we're seeing
Is
here.
what we're seeing, yes.
Tell us about Miriam. That was sort of a remarkable thing that happened. Tell us about Miriam.
This is when I started remembering things. This is when I remember happenings. We walked in with many women, of course. 1,000 women in each barrack walked in at the same time, sort of. A woman came to my sister immediately. They recognized each other. They were they had been campmates probably 5 years before the camp.
Like at a summer camp, right?
Summer camp, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mhm.
They really cried. They laughed. They were just happy to meet. Miriam immediately came to us with 2 pieces of sugar cubes that people use in their coffee, which she told us to eat. We did, and this is something that I remembered and felt for many, many, many years, up to almost recent years, going through my veins, giving me energy at that time. We haven't eaten in 4 days, and I suppose this was the result of that.
Mhm.
And she also told us right away that our mother and siblings are already dead. They were gassed immediately, which we did not believe, but it's true.
Mhm. And that was just really within just a very few hours after you got there that you were.
4 hours.
And yeah. Well, Miriam had a kind of a bit of a responsible role in the barrack, right? And that was important to you, yeah.
Oh, she was the person in the barrack. She was the head of the barrack.
As a prisoner, yeah.
As a prisoner.
Yeah.
But a special prisoner.
Yeah.
She took my sister to be her assistant, which saved her life.
Right.
And she somehow got me a job to be a messenger, which really saved my life.
We're going to come back to that in just a moment. The place where you were sent, the Sea Logger. Tell us about Sea Logger. There was something very unique about it. Tell us. And I think it had to do with the fact that it was 4 young women like you and Teresa.
Yes. There were 30,000 women in that camp. What was special about it really is that I was told this several years ago that I don't have a tattoo only because as they sent us there, they were prepared to murder us immediately. I don't know what happened, why they didn't, but they didn't, and we are not tattooed, but we were there.
Yeah.
Not exactly 30,000 women. There were almost 2,000. I understand the 1,800 women who at one point were taken out, tattooed, and then sent to work every day to what was called Canada, which we knew nothing about.
That was 1,800 out of 30,000.
Right.
So 30 barracks, each with 1,000 young women like you and Teresa in there. 30,000 altogether. Ruth, you were 14 and your sister Teresa was 21 while you were in Auschwitz. And as you said, Miriam was able to get your sister Teresa to be her assistant, and she gave you a job as a messenger. Tell us what that meant. What did it mean to be a messenger? And were you the only one, or were there other messengers?
There were other messengers. I'm not sure how many, but probably at least 1, 2, or 3 from each barrack. I don't know what it depended on, but we were always 3 people at the gate where the Nazis had a whatever on the other side of the electric wire. We were on this side of the electric wire inside the camp. We never really, we hardly ever saw them, but we never touched them. They never touched us. We heard them talk, and they were telling always some terrible stories of what is going to happen to us. They knew that all of us spoke German quite well. So they were having fun with us.
They're talking to each other in German, saying what's going to happen to you.
no, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
It's a sort of torture.
A form of torture.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we had to take, and I don't remember whether verbal or physical. I would say verbal
Hmm.
because I don't ever remember being on the other side or them being on the inside. Messages and take them to any one of the barracks. Or if there was a message from a barrack to them that we have to pick up a message, then we were told to do that too.
So literally you were messengers. You were
Yes.
ordered to take a message that one Nazi guards or officials would have, take it elsewhere to another barrack. Yeah.
Yes.
We have a video question from a student named Annalise from Washington, D.C. Ruth, let's go ahead and hear Annalise's question of you, and then I'll repeat it just to make sure that you and everybody hears it clearly. So let's listen to Annalise. Okay.
My name is Annalise, and I was wondering what it was like to be a courier in Auschwitz. I didn't know that such a job existed, and I was wondering how it affected your experience in the camp and what was one of the things that you remember most about it.
So Annalise is asking you, how did your job as a courier or messenger affect your experience in the camp, and what do you remember most about it?
Really, one thing stands out in my mind, aside from being there, standing there, talking with the two other youngsters. When I had typhoid fever, I was at they took me to the infirmary where when the Nazis came in on several mornings to select the weak and the very, very sick, the nurses and the doctor hid me. I did not understand what that means at the time, but I understand now because I just read a book about one of the other messenger girls who had the same experience. And she said that the nurses put her in a blanket and took her to the latrine when the Nazis came in and kept her there until they left. This is how they saved her life. I suppose that's what they did to me too. I understood at the time that they took me someplace in the back, but I don't.
Yeah. You obviously typhoid fever, very serious, and typically when one of the prisoners got very ill and had to go to the infirmary, it almost always meant that they were going to be selected and sent to their death. So the fact that you went to the infirmary, but it sounds like you were shielded or protected by the nurses and doctors that were working there. Yeah. Ruth, despite women and men being separated at Auschwitz, you did end up having an encounter with your father, who you last saw when you first arrived at Auschwitz. And up until that point, you had no idea what had happened to him. Tell us about that encounter with your father.
Okay, my sister and I received a message one day from my father. I have no idea how these things happen, but that we should meet him at the barbed wire at a certain hour because he'll be walking by from Auschwitz to Birkenau and passing by our camp. Sure enough, we went there, saw him and many other men. We waved to each other. They were carrying blankets, but we waved to each other. We laughed, screamed, loud, happy. It was great. And then we didn't see him anymore.
But the encounter really was just seeing him and being able to wave to him, not a conversation or anything like that.
No.
But you knew he was alive at that point.
He was alive, and we were not sure. We were looking for my uncle, and we did not see my uncle, so I don't know if he was there.
you had another uncle who was also there, and you got a message from him as well while you were at Auschwitz. Can you tell us about that?
This was my mother's youngest brother who lived in Brno in Czechoslovakia. He sent us a message telling us to come to a different area at the barbed wire because there was a Czech camp and I guess Auschwitz, or in Auschwitz, but Auschwitz 1, Auschwitz 2, the Czech camp, whatever. We did go to meet him at 4:30 one day when he told us to. We met him. He talked, couldn't touch because we were on opposite sides of the fence. He told us that he was in Theresienstadt for a while. Then he was sent to Auschwitz and he will be gassed in a few days. When he doesn't show up, we should know that he is no longer alive. Mm-hmm. So this went on for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then we went there again, and we went to see him every day. And when we got there on the fatal day, we met a young woman who brought a message from my uncle that he loves us dearly, but he's no longer alive. And up until that moment, that was the most terrible experience I had. More devastating, more devastating than when my mother sent me away, because I guess we didn't realize what was happening. My siblings. But here we were told this horrible story, and we knew nothing about the fact that that is what was happening from Theresienstadt. People were sent over and killed. They were sent over to be killed and killed.
And he knew that was going to happen to him.
And he knew that it's going to happen.
Ruth, in early October 1944, there was a prisoner revolt at Auschwitz that included prisoners setting fire to a crematorium. You witnessed a portion of that. Will you tell us what you remember of that?
Clearly, I was standing by the Nazis' post, which was, as I said, on the outside of the barbed wire, after which was a very wide street. That's where I met my dad, and I saw these 2 push carts being pushed by 4 women. The push carts were covered with blankets, and they were just going and then turning down to the left, which was this also a very wide street, which was also leading to the crematorium and gas chamber, of course. About an hour, we didn't know what they were doing, but an hour later or so, we heard a small explosion, and we didn't know what happened. But what did happen was, once that explosion occurred, the Sonderkommando was held responsible for it. I understand that they were killed almost immediately. The Sonderkommando were the men who were taking care of the dead who have been gassed to be thrown into the
They were the ones who were forced to remove the bodies after they'd been gassed.
Gassed and put them into the crematorium.
Yeah.
They were killed immediately. That's what I understand. Mm-hmm. The 4 women were taken back to Auschwitz and hung in the Auschwitz square about 4 weeks later, which we didn't know anything about either. Yes.
Yeah. Ruth, we have a question that's come from one of our viewers today named Regina. Regina asks, how did you survive the cold, hunger, and mistreatment in Auschwitz-Birkenau?
I don't know about the hunger. We just survived it.
Mm-hmm.
Cold was very cold at night, but in the morning, it was not cold. Sometimes it was beastly hot. We were there from May to October, to the end of October. I don't remember being cold during the day. Didn't have clothing. I mean, didn't have really clothing. I don't remember if we had undergarments or not. I asked one woman who was also a survivor, and she didn't remember either. So I don't know if we did or not. Our clothing was the striped either pants or a skirt and a jacket.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there was a third thing you asked.
Just how you survived the mistreatment.
We were not mistreated. Our barrack, at least, was never mistreated. There was nobody to mistreat us. The Nazis or any men never came in. Yeah. The head of the camp, Miriam, was a truly wonderful person. So we were not mistreated. I don't know about other barracks.
So in many respects, in that sea lager, you were sort of really secluded and isolated in many respects from what was going on elsewhere throughout Auschwitz.
Yeah. Very lucky.
Yeah. You and Teresa were then transported and forced to work at 2 other concentration camps before you were liberated in May 1945. Tell us how you were able to get back to Mukachevo after your liberation, and what you found when you got home to your hometown. What did you find?
Well, my sister and I decided to just go home. Whatever way we were going to go home, we here. And I really don't know how this happened, but we boarded a train to go from Holešov to Prague, and from Prague straight home. In Prague, there were messages left by my dad that he is going home. He was in Buchenwald, and he was liberated a month before we were. Anyone who is from Mukachevo, anyone who is a friend, family, he is going to be in Mukachevo and wait for anybody and everybody. So we got home to Mukachevo, and I am sure I was thrilled when I saw my dad, but I have no memory of it. None whatsoever. I don't remember hugging him, kissing him, talking to him, nothing, not until later.
When you said your father left a message for you in Prague, at that time, right after the war, with hundreds of thousands of refugees and survivors from camps, and that was what people tried to do, leave messages in different places to try to connect with whoever might still be alive. And so your father left that message for you. And up until that point, you had seen him and waved to him when you were at Auschwitz, but you had no idea if he was alive, or much less where he had gone. So
that was almost a year.
Yeah.
That was in June or the beginning of July, and this was the end of May.
Yeah. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. Following your liberation, as you and your sister made your way back to Mukachevo and reunited with your father, you were in serious pain, which had started while you were in the camps. Will you tell us about your diagnosis when you got it, and the treatment that you got for your condition?
Well, first of all, my dad, but I couldn't walk again. My dad took me because I got all better, no pain on the train, no pain whatsoever, which is, I don't know how the brain or body works, but I was fine on the train, standing day and night for 6 or 7 days. When we got home, I started slowly not to be well. My dad took me to Budapest, to the Children's or Jewish hospital, where they x-rayed me every day, at least 3 times for a month, and came up with nothing, no diagnosis whatsoever. So my dad took me home, and again, I was fine, lying down doing nothing, but got back to where I was before and was in terrible pain. So he, along with my aunt Hannah in Slovakia, arranged for me to get a bed in Bratislava in the either Jewish or Children's Hospital. There was a doctor who was my mother's friend, as well as Aunt Hannah's friend, and she did probably all the arranging. However, there were no beds available until March. So I stayed in my aunt's house in Hlovec until I was transferred to Bratislava, where I again was prodded and needled and whatever else for 2 or 3 months until they found that I had tuberculosis on the spine. The treatment for that was non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
So the decision was, and very few people with that condition survive. So the decision was by the doctors to fatten me up with the most nutritious food and all the vitamins available, and put me in a half body cast, half meaning from here to, I guess, the bottom of my body, not my legs. But this was free. I was not allowed to move at all for 9 months. After that time, my blood tests were probably better. I probably felt better. And I was taken out of the cast. And shortly after that, I was told to leave.
And then you went for a recuperation period after you got out of the body cast and up in the mountains, if I remember right. And it was that actually turned out to be a really good thing for you. Yeah.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah. And tell us about this picture.
The doctor on the left, the woman on the left was our doctor. All the others had been prisoners who were liberated. The woman right behind me remained my friend for maybe a few years, and then we lost touch. But we had a wonderful time there. We danced, we played, we hiked every day. It was really wonderful. And I got all better.
And after you were better, Ruth, after that terrible ordeal of the hospitalization, being in the body cast, then your recuperation, you and your father came to the United States, arriving in April 1948, and your sister Teresa joined you 6 months later. What did it take for you to be able to come to the United States?
It was all due to my sister. She is the one who arranged everything after she and my dad received affidavits from my family in the United States.
And this is you and Teresa, isn't it?
Yes, in either Carlsbad or Francesbad. I'm not sure where.
Okay.
Here too, I don't think I ever mentioned it, but I am wearing a leather corset. I had to wear that for at least 2 more years.
Oh, as part of your recuperation?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's leather and metal. And it was not easy, but it was.
Ruth, I was really struck when you told me that when you came to the United States, that your sister came 6 months later, and that was all due to a missing piece of paper, if I remember right. By the time your sister was able to go get the missing piece of paper and take it back, which didn't take a terribly long time, 1,000 more people were in between your sister and you and your dad to get
Right.
to come to the US, and that took 6 months longer.
She got to New York at the end of September.
Yeah. Ruth, do you know how your father coped with such tragic losses in his life, including losing his wife, son, and other family members?
I just remember one thing. My dad never said anything about his experience. I know he was in Buchenwald. I know nothing about him in Buchenwald other than books that I read about Buchenwald that must have been the same as his life. He never said anything other than, I remember one time, whether it was in Mukachevo, in Shatets, where we lived, where he lived and I lived for a few months, or in the States. I was walking with him and he said, I just miss my wife and my son so terribly. And that's all he said. And I remember what I said to him, which was so that I will take care of you until the end of our lives. And I did.
And you did, and you did.
Yes, he lived with us.
Ruth, just this past January 2025, you returned to Auschwitz-Birkenau for the first time since being imprisoned there in 1944. Can you tell us about this moment and what emotions this trip must have brought up for you?
By the time I got here, I was okay to this point.
Mm-hmm.
The most terrible part was when we left the museum at Auschwitz and walked upstairs to come to Birkenau. First of all, we had to go through a tunnel that called out all the names of the perished people. I realized it, but my daughter was devastated by it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was that upset me. Well, I know what upset me, but I was so very upset that almost from the time that we got into the tunnel until maybe a 15-minute walk, until I managed to get my breath sort of. At some points, I thought that I'll have to stop breathing. That's how terrible it was. And that was really the worst part of the whole Auschwitz trip. The rest I could deal with.
And Ruth, after you finished that visit, you said in retrospect you were glad that you went.
I am.
Yeah. Ruth,
many-
I'm sorry.
For many reasons.
Ruth, before we come to a close shortly, I want to share one last comment from the audience. Laura writes, "Thank you for sharing your experience, as awful as it was. Your teacher and family members are with us through your voice from Virginia with love."
Thank you.
Ruth, I have just one final question for you, and that is, as we face a dangerous surge in anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, please tell us why you feel it is important for you to share your firsthand account of the Holocaust and what all of us can learn from it.
I always really forget what I want to say, but I will try. I think the world has to know. And at this point, we are the only ones who can tell it. Hopefully, there'll be some other people telling it in our words.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the world has to know, has to learn everything that was or that is to know about it. And if it's necessary, fight with words only, but fight to make this not happen again, ever. or anything like it.
Ruth, thank you so much for being willing to do this today. I know it's not an easy thing at all for you, but it is so important, as you just explained. It is so important that you share what you experience with as many people as possible, and you've done that today, and we are just enormously grateful to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would like to take a moment to thank our donor. First Person is made possible through the generous support of the Lewis Franklin Smith Foundation. And I would like to invite you to join us again in November for another First Person program. Thank you for being with us today.